Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week. Today we are looking into the Luton Town MIGs, their formation, history and some of their greatest tear-ups. We will hear from Luton lads and other top terrace faces from other teams and get their honest opinion on the Luton mobs. Before we start, I just want to say that I do sometimes use factual information from books that I personally own. I will always promote the book and introduce the book to a new audience and to hopefully generate more interest in the book, which in turn might help the author out, that are just normal football lads like you and me. Anyway, let's get straight into it. The Luton Town MIGs. This mob had produced one very famous member, and whether you like him or not, Tommy Robinson was a member of the mob for a period of time. That is fact. He absolutely was a genuine football lad. So, let's start with him. Tommy was one of the top boys in Luton's MIG Crew. For a period of time it looked like every firm in the country had an unrelenting hatred of Luton, and it soon became the battleground of choice. From the ironic name to its inclusion of a black hooligan firm, the Luton Blacks, the MIG Crew were always a bit different. Tommy Robinson was never the average hooligan and MIG down charts his 25-year career in football violence and the gritty reality of following a team in the lower echelons of English football. Robinson was also involved with the first generation of Anglo-West Indians that learnt to mix their own culture with the whites' only world of football hooliganism, and how they became the MIG Crew, underdogs who took on the legendary firms holding a far bigger reputation. Now let's hear from an actual Luton MIG as he talks about what life was like with the firm in the 80s and some of the encounters he had. These are his own words. Let's start with a nightclub called Molly's. It was known to turn a blind eye to underage drinking, as schoolboys discovered, and because the club was strategically placed within a brick's throw away from the train station, Molly's soon doubled up as the HQ for the MIGs. Their gang name came from the Russian fighter jets, but it also stood for men in gear, denoting a strict adherence to football's discerning dress code. Our earliest run-ins took place when the Molly's boys, aged roughly between 13 and 18, powered by a mixture of bravado and the whiff of Paco Rabanne, journeyed to the nearby towns for a weekly punch-up. Wheathampstead and Harpenden were the two main ports of call, and heavily outnumbered by natives, we carried the lofty albeit misguided notion that somehow we were custodians of Luton's honour. Exam revision couldn't compete with this more engaging weekend ritual. After a solid tear-up, we avoided the attention of the old Bill and, charged with alcohol and adrenaline, returned to base with tales to tell and war wounds to exhibit. It was these unruly invasions that fashioned a basic manifesto the MIG cred would expand upon over time. We learned a lot during our first season in top flight. Hosting the big teams was a valuable learning curve. Most clubs were putting firms together as casual culture gradually ousted the dated boot boys from grounds around the country. And City away, and there was a lot riding on the game, a Luton win would relegate the Manx, a City win or draw would send us down. On the morning of the game, a huge contingent of Luton arrived at the station, decked out in orange scarves and flags and straw boaters. In the sea of scarfers, a few stood out, wearing diamond-cut Pringles, Lyle and Scott roll necks, Lois jumbo cords, and Nike tennis shoes. In order to distance ourselves from the rabble, we travelled by coach, allowing us the freedom to rob Keele service station blind and licence to go on walkabout in small groups before the game. Tension was high all day, and Main Road basked in brilliant sunshine. The atmosphere soon darkened as the Governors attacked several Luton players at the final whistle, an affront that was quickly forgotten. A combination of factors culminating with this game gelled to see the MIGs emerge strongly for the 1983-84 season. We had the bug. As the contest for supremacy on the park warmed up, we were driven by off-the-pitch battles, cultivating a habit that would consume our lives. Any firm taking the trouble to visit us would be pleasantly surprised. Turnout for home games was a feature at Luton and virtually guaranteed until the late 80s. Our first trip to Queen's Park Rangers came in November 1983, and numerous skirmishes with them followed over the years. The Leicester grudge began the following season after they came mob-handed for a Tuesday night Milk Cup match, well-dressed, well-organised, and well up for the row. We were due to play them shortly afterwards at Filbert Street, and the Molly's planning committee swung into action. Paddy W., a charismatic and street-smart hustler, was responsible for travelling arrangements, laying on 2 coaches, with more travelling by train. Paddy possessed a flair for leadership and was highly influential at Luton. A few of the older black lads, the potty chops, had a rude boy styling that infused the MIGS language and dress sense, Paddy perhaps more than others, due to the respect he commanded. The baby squad had also built a decent reputation, but after the game our 2 coach loads stood firm and gave a good account of ourselves. It was hard too if either firm came out on top over the years, but both would claim to have edged it. Meanwhile, in the high-rise flats of Marsh Farm, something else was afoot. To make a few quid, cash-strapped tenants could be persuaded to hire out their homes for all-night blues parties. Furniture was ferried out by day, making way for the giant speaker stacks and crates of beer, when the switch went off. The DJ operated in darkness and the party started. The bass line thundered throughout the block, but as these dances were dangerously packed, any police intervention was deemed a risky call. The main players at the time were Soul Incorporated, Positive Force, Lovelight, and Master Rock. The latter was a rig with which DJ Scooby and a youthful Matt Jam Lamont learned their craft, and behind it was the enigmatic Aubrey B., a figure largely credited with introducing matchday tactics to the firm. The MIGs at this time were now recruiting from neighbourhoods like Dallow Road, Farley Hill, Marsh Farm, and even the outlying areas of Harpenden and Bedford. The MIGs were practically blue-collar, and work was just a means of supporting our passions, clothes, drink, drugs, and going to the match. Close to the ground sat a factory called Propofloor, and with several faces on the payroll, it became a fertile breeding ground for the MIGs. Whilst we were far from an identikit group, the makeup consisted of largely builders, electricians, factory hands, mechanics and shop workers, occupations that left us scope to pursue other interests. There were exceptions to the rule, such as the trainee lawyers that proved useful and broadened the dynamic. The Blockers Arms on the High Town Road, now called the Well, was another popular haunt for the MIGs. For a later drink, we frequented a dive called Strokes, where a measure of northern soul was often accompanied with a black eye, courtesy of the bouncers. Trading punches became an inevitable consequence of a night on the town, either one-on-one straighteners or large-scale rucks. These were very aggressive times, and with so much testosterone to discharge, it was little wonder we were not welcomed in many pubs and bars. Predictably, there would be in town disputes, and at the back end of 1983, an envoy from Lucy Farm arrived at Molly's to settle a beef with the MIGs, resulting in a street brawl that spread across Midland Road. Luton's other firm of note were an older crew called the Riffs, a well-respected and very game outfit who took their cue from the MIGs on a good turnout from the Luton Blacks. The MIGs and the Riffs combined, the mob might be up to 350 strong, but it was not always big numbers that got the best results. For long periods, the hardcore MIGs, those that were there week in, week out, numbered about 50. They often had their finest hours with a smaller head count. A bad day for the firm was when we hosted Millwall in the FA Cup. In short, the town was demolished by an enormous Millwall herd, strengthened by mercenaries from Spurs, Chelsea and Arsenal. If we would have had a full mob out, we would still have been swarmed, but our plight was compounded by a below par showing from the MIGS, and the missing personnel brought the question of commitment sharply into focus. To our credit, we learned from it and came back stronger and more focused than before. The truth is not many clubs could muster anything like the numbers to answer that Millwall army, but in response, the MIGS became more compact, shrinking size in order to weed out the weak. As the 1985-86 season began, we took matters more seriously, and with no visitors to entertain, our attention turned to away games. Earlier that season, Aston Villa was earmarked. The morning arrived, and less than 30 gathered at the station. But regardless, we travelled with confidence in our small but handy crew. The day started well when we realised that our train changed at Leicester, who were setting off to London for their game against Arsenal that afternoon. It went like a dream as we caught the baby squad napping. I'm not sure they realised their numerical superiority, but we forced them out of their own train station and scattered them in the surrounding streets. We even managed to catch our connecting train without anyone getting nicked, so we were already on a high by the time we reached Birmingham. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, you will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time.